Hey guys, it's Anthony,
And Derek's
and we are
High Creations.
the Scientific Solutions Company. Today we're releasing our new class, the Dynamic Duo, Foliar Feeding, and Fertigation. If you have any questions, leave us a comment down below. Hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, shoot us a message there.
And for watching this video, you get 10% off on your next order. Can't wait to hear from you.
Thanks for tuning in. Bye.
Welcome, you two. Thank you so much for being here today to present about foliar feeding and fertigation. I have to tell you, when I first saw the name of the presentation, foliar feeding and fertigation, the dynamic duo, I thought it was talking about Anthony and Derek. So I had to giggle about that.
That's pretty awesome. We'll take the compliment.
Yes, absolutely.
Before we actually jump into the formal presentation, I have some questions for you. We've been working together now for 3 or 4 years, and we at the Urban Farm love your products. So we've had a lot of opportunities to interact.
Okay.
And I know some of the things that are going to come up that I want to define before we actually get started. And this is a curious new thing for us. I've not heard this before. You call yourself a scientific solutions company. Tell me about that. I love that.
All right. No, that's really exciting. So a scientific solutions company. One of the things that we do when we're out in the community is that we listen to all the different problems that people are having, either if it's growing vegetables, if they're trying to maintain a healthy fruit tree. And they've covered the basics. They've covered the basics of I water properly, I provide the right micronutrients, but they never really talk about the growth stages of the plant and the chemistry that's happening and the microbiology that changes in the soil as your plant is going through its growth stages. And that's something that we wanted to do, is that we wanted to bring solutions from a scientific approach. And that's why we've had about 99% success in making sure that all the trees are developing fruit. We explain some of the difficult aspects of the chemistry, like your plant growth hormones and what are they doing to the plant, how are they signaling the plant to grow. We talk about the also difficult microbiology. You can't see microbes with the naked eye. So it's really difficult to talk about, even on a science level. So that's where we are. We are a scientific solutions company. We bring results through science and expertise.
And, we've known you long enough to know that that's absolutely the case. I love that. You're constantly learning and sharing and teaching with us. It's like we have to bring this to our listeners. So thank you for that.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Cool.
and in our presentation, we talk about the Wisdom line, which is products we develop. But sometimes there's other companies out there that want to develop their own nutrients. Some companies that want to use certain specific bacteria to inoculate their soil. That's another level of scientific solutions that maybe not everyone might be familiar with. We have our own microbial library, and we culture those bacteria and put them in our products.
Yes.
Nice. So tonight's about fertigation and foliar feeding. Let's start by defining what is fertigation.
So fertigation is a technique that can be used to deliver nutrients to your plants. It's going to require a reservoir, some sort of drip tape and plumbing. And what it is you actually make your nutrient solution, fill up this tank, and then it's like a timer. It's going to be able to feed whatever area you're trying to take care of, whether it's through sprinklers, drip system, or flood irrigation. So it's really a technique, really a system that you can use to feed your plants, your grass, whatever you're trying to take care of, really.
Cool. And because setting up a fertigation system might be a little complicated. If somebody wanted to do a simpler step, there's something called drench, right?
Yeah, drench application is your most basic way of delivering nutrients. It can be done in a bucket, one of those watering pails. And what you'll do is you'll fill up that bucket with water, add the nutrients, mix, and once you pour it down, that's considered drench. So that's like the most basic idea of fertigation. Fertigation is more automated, a little bit more advanced. Definitely helps out if you have a larger area to feed.
Cool. And that's just adding some nutrients in a 5-gallon bucket and taking it over and drenching it or dumping it in your basin around your tree or plants, right?
That's right. Simple as that.
Excellent. Now, what is foliar feeding?
Foliar feeding is a little bit different from fertigation, where foliar feeding is a technique used to correct micronutrient deficiencies. But we've been able to take it a step further and actually influence the plant's growth. And so foliar feeding, for example, if you're starting to see some type of corrosis on your leaves, they're turning yellow, and we know that you've applied plenty of nutrients through your fertigation, and it's taken a little bit longer than normal. We normally make a foliar solution, and that foliar solution contains some type of a mineral that's going to bind with whatever nutrient you need to deliver to that plant. And you just basically spray the plant. You're spraying the leaves, you're spraying the bark, you're spraying the branch, and you'll just allow that nutrients to absorb in the plant to correct those deficiencies immediately.
Great. And this is as simple as buying a 1 or 2 gallon pump sprayer at your local nursery and putting nutrients in there, pumping it up and spraying it on the plants, right?
And foliar feeding your plants. That's basically what you're going to do. One of the things about foliar feeding, like we said, is a little bit more targeted. So once you get your flowers to develop, you actually want to let the plant take care of itself until they're pollinated. We don't want to disturb any of the flowers during foliar feeding or just spraying the plant itself. And so there's a time where we just have to take a step back and let the plant do what it was designed to do and grow fruit.
Nice. And you're going to bring up one more thing in this conversation tonight, and that's called a BRIX, BRIX. Can you tell us what that is? Just a, like a 1-minute description.
Yeah, so BRIX is basically the measure of soluble sugars inside of the fruit. This is very important because we as the consumers of that end product want to have something that's nice and sweet and delicious. And so BRIX is just basically measuring how much sugars were built up during the process of that fruit development. One of the things that we notice is that once your fruit has the proper nutrients through fertigation and foliar feeding, that you're able to get your BRIX to the maximum level, which is around, for most fruit that hangs off of a tree, is around 18 to 22% BRIX. If you can get those levels, then you're going to have a nice, delicious fruit. If you're not able to get those levels, you might find your fruit being a little tart. But if you're doing fertigation and foliar feeding at the same time, you can rest assured that you're going to get an excellent sweet fruit, which is what we mean by BRIX.
Now, not only is it sweet, but it's more nutrient dense. Is that not the case?
Absolutely. As your fruit's developing and as it's getting sweeter, that's an indicator that your fruit has all of the necessary minerals, available minerals. So whatever was available for that fruit now will be available for you. So it all goes back to nutritional health.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you for this pre-conversation. Now let's get on with the presentation.
All right. Thank you for hosting. Today, we'll be talking about the dynamic duo, foliar feeding and fertigation using the wisdom lines by High Creations, a scientific solutions company. Now, I know you guys are familiar with the urban farm, but what about us? This is who we are. We're High Creations, and I'm Anthony Dominguez, microbiologist, owner and co-founder, and I have a degree from the University of Arizona in microbiology.
And I'm Derek Zellers, an environmental scientist. I'm also the co-owner. I went to the University of Texas, San Antonio.
So the dynamic duo. Today we'll be talking about fertigation and foliar feeding. Let's talk about fertigation to begin with. I like to say fertigation is the everyday approach because we're using small continuous applications of the wisdom line, and that's one of the most ideal ways we can deliver these products. What it's so great about it is that it's a constant source of nutrients for your soil microorganisms. And what this is going to do is going to promote microbial diversity and a competitive plant microbiome. And on the other hand, we have foliar feeding. It's a more advanced technique. We use it less frequently. It's highly targeted, but it's very effective. Some of the good things about foliar feeding is you can really use it to influence your plant or tree. And some of the goals we like to shoot for when we're doing this, we're looking to prolong blooms, increase flower production. We're trying to increase yield, and we want longer lasting produce with no deficiencies. And if we do see deficiencies in our trees or plants, we want to be able to correct them as quickly as possible. So what type of products would we be using for both fertigation and foliar feeding? Well, of course, we're going to use the Wisdom line by High Creations, and it consists of 4 products. We have Heart, our humic acid, Soul, which is a humic acid derivative, similar properties to Heart because they're made from the same material, Essence, which is our pure kelp product, and Noble Gills, which is our fish emulsion, and it just so happens to be the only fertilizer we have on the line. The rest of them would be considered soil amendments.
Let's jump into fertigation. It's one of my favorite things to do. Why? Because I'm a microbial guy. So I love seeing the diversity of what's coming out of fertigation. With our products, like Anthony said earlier, we want to promote soil microbiology. This is a very important. Why is it important? Because in the end, we are not the ones feeding the plant. The microbes are feeding the plant. So we actually have a saying is feed the soil that feeds the microbes that eventually feeds the plant. And so feeding with nutrient dense soil amendments will help unlock the vital minerals, but these minerals will be unlocked by the microbes. And so that's why fertigation is so important, especially when you're using the Wisdom line.
Yes, absolutely. With the continual use of the Wisdom line through fertigation, we actually promote a diverse plant microbiome. And why would that be important? Well, because a lot of pathogens in our soil are opportunistic. So as soon as they find something, just the littlest crack, the littlest opening that they can take, they're going to attack. But if we have a diverse and competitive microbiome in the soil, a lot of diversity with our microbes on there, they have a less chance of establishing themselves. Now, on the other hand, we have foliar feeding, which has less to do with the microbes and more to do with the plant. And this is where you can really influence the genetic potential of your plant. You see, we have 3 photos up there at vegetative growth, flower, and harvest, well, right when the fruit is ripening. Those are some specific times and when we would foliar feed. One, the first for the vegetative growth to develop those leaves. 2, you're going to try to induce those flowers. That's what we're talking about, using products like Essence, which we'll talk about more in a little bit, to set those flowers to bloom all at the same time, like the likely chance that they'll be pollinated all at the same time, and you'll have a longer lasting harvest. Also, we may run into deficiencies because of the soil, because of our conditions. And the great thing about foliar feeding is you can spray the leaves exactly where they're having trouble, where they're showing signs, and you can correct that a lot faster than you would taking the soil approach. One thing we also like to talk about is the next year's crop. That's another benefit of foliar feeding. Via some of the properties of the Wisdom line, we can actually store sugars for next year's harvest while the trees are in dormancy. And I can tell you a lot of people don't like to foliar feed in dormancy, but if you do, the results will show in the next spring, your next harvest. They are really, really beneficial. A lot of people don't do that. It's not very common. It's not very known, but through our trials and research, we have discovered it is really, really beneficial. So why would we use Heart and Soul for fertigation? Now, I don't want to say this is the most basic, but this is your very baseline, like Heart and Soul, just the real bones of everything. So I think we talked a little bit earlier about Heart and Soul are made from the same material, and they're actually organic acids. One of the big things about Soul is that it does have a different molecular structure than Heart, which gives it the ability to deliver nutrients directly into those plant cells. It's very unique. And a fun fact about Soul, Derek has been studying Soul since he was in college, so he knows a lot about this.
Yes. It's one of my favorite products from the Wisdom line. One of the things that we want to understand about fertigation is that your minerals, when we're talking about calcium, magnesium, your iron, your copper, your phosphorus, all of those have to be in an available form. And so one of the things about fertigation is that you're constantly feeding the soil. And as you're constantly feeding that bacteria, they're constantly releasing nutrients into the soil solution. And this is where your nutrients are going to be uptaken. So one of the things about soil that it's going to automatically bind all of those available nutrients and take them directly across the root membrane root zone.
One of the frequently asked questions we get is there, a lot of people like to say, oh, is that important? Is that, there's already so much calcium, there's already so much potassium in our soils. But the thing is it available? And if it's not, then you really do need heart and soul to help make those available so they can be uptaken by the plants. Another benefits of these organic acids is it's going to stimulate enzyme production. Those enzymes are going to continue to break down the nutrients. They're also going to promote root growth. Some of these bacteria will develop their own plant growth hormones, stimulating those roots to grow. But not only that, it also starts up the immune system. It helps some of those important cofactors, those small metals, those micronutrients. They're going to help stimulate the plant. And overall, it's going to help increase the nutrient content of our plants and the fruits that it produces. Another great thing I like about heart, though, is the soil aeration. So we hear the term opening up the soil, and that's heart actually pulling apart compacted soil. Like we deal a lot with clay here, but not only it works on clay soil, but it can work on sandy soil as well. It can actually help produce organic matter to help build up those soil aggregates. So overall, this is one of the greatest ways to use heart and soul is through fertigation. It is very, very beneficial. Take our next step to essence. And we like to say essence is simply essence. A lot of kelp products on the market will be extracted with potassium hydroxide and it'll turn black. And what happens during that process is it burns up the plants to release the nutrients. So in trying to unlock it, they actually do some damage, but not us. We use pure pulverized kelp, and which makes it the most concentrated product we have. It preserves the integrity of the plant itself. So we get a lot of the benefits from the kelp. Being that it is our most concentrated product, a little will go a long way. And we like to say about essence, it's that it's the ultimate hormonal balance because it contains naturally occurring plant growth hormones. It also is loaded with trace minerals, beneficial microbes, and amino acids. One of the reasons why it's such a great microbe food for the soil bacteria is it has a certain texture to it. It's gritty and it takes up a lot of surface area, making it an ideal source of microbe food. And you can really see this happening if you spray it on some compost or maybe some wood chips. You're definitely going to see an increased growth in mycelia. It'll definitely be there. And a little bit what we talked about earlier, increasing the sugars, which we all know as bricks. And so if you use this properly, you are actually going to increase the bricks levels in your fruit and vegetables, making them sweeter, and they will last longer.
Anthony, one of the secret weapons that we have when we go talk to our customers that's had fruit trees in the ground for 3 or 4 years that's never fruited. And the first thing they ask us is, hey, my fruit tree isn't fruiting. Can you guys get it to fruit? And without hesitation, we always say yes. And we go through, we listen to their stories about how they're doing the proper amount of water, they're adding the proper amount of nutrients, but they can't get their tree to fruit. And so one of the secret weapons that we use is the plant growth hormones that are contained within essence. This year, as we've been visiting our customers and clients, we have about a 99% success rate, which means that every single tree that is on their property is fruiting.
Wow, that's incredible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, so
I can't agree with that 100%. That's about where we're at. They've got tons of flower production. And you know what? Those flowers hang on. They're pretty tough. We've suffered through some windstorms here, and those flowers hold on. They're not gonna let go. It definitely makes the tree more robust. That definitely helps for sure. Noble Gills. Okay, so this is our only fertilizer in the line. It is a great overall fertilizer, but what really makes us special is that we use sardines, and sardines are going to live in deep, cold waters. And it's that environment that produces an overall better quality fish fertilizer. That's why we call it the royalty of the sea, because it's those fish are going to produce higher protein contents and higher fat contents. So it's a really, really good fertilizer. One of the greatest things about it is its soft source, a digestible source of nitrogen. There's nothing worse than when you try a new fertilizer and it burns your plants. But Noble Gills, that will not happen. It's been broken down. You know, this product takes us a long time to make. We actually have to let it. I feel like it almost takes a year for us to make a really good batch of this, and that's what we do every year. We prep for the year ahead. So we're making Noble Gills right now for next year.
Yes.
It does take a long time. Another great thing about Noble Gills is the available calcium and magnesium. Keyword available. Now you may think there's a lot of calcium, potassium, magnesium, phosphorus in your soil, but is it bound? Is it available? Can the plants take it up? If if it was available, then you wouldn't be having a problem. You wouldn't be worried about it. But when you're using Noble Gills, you know that it's available. You know that it can be uptaken by the plant. It's very important for the development of new growth. Every single plant cell is going to need calcium. Every single plant cell is going to need magnesium to start photosynthesis. It's a great sustainable organic soil conditioner, meaning it's going to help, similar to how heart does, it's going to help actually increase the water holding capacity of that soil. It's a great source of microbe food. It's definitely the type of food you want to be feeding them because, again, it has the calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, potassium. All those are very important. And it works really well with the leafy greens. We're talking plants that are going to have a little bit higher nitrogen demand, like spinach, kale, some of your peppers that need a lot of nitrogen. It works very good for those. Your tomatoes too. I can't remember how many people have told us that this is tomatoes love it. I've got so many tomatoes. They're great. No blossom end rot, and that's because of the micronutrients in there. We've talked a little bit about fertigation, which is the everyday approach, and now we have foliar feeding. So we actually use 3 products for foliar feeding: Soul, Essence, and Noble Gills. Now, this is the caveat. You can use Heart. In the past, we haven't because it's just a darker product. And if you spray it on the fruit, chances are there's a slim chance that it could happen, but it could stain the fruit a little bit. And we didn't want that on the commercial level. So we always stay away from it. But Heart's very safe to spray on any type of tree you have. It can actually penetrate through the bark. It has a little bit of iron, which is very much needed in our high alkaline soils here in Arizona. But it's safe to use. So if you want to use Heart to spray some of your trees, it's absolutely okay. But today we'll focus on Soul, Essence, and Noble Gills. And why are we gonna foliar feed with Soul? And I think Derek's, this is your product, man.
Absolutely. Thanks, Anthony. So everyone talk about foliar feeding. How are we going to get the nutrients inside of the plant? Well, chances are we are not. We're relying on the bacteria that probably is going to be living on the leaf surface. We're going to spray those plants and then hope that the bacteria can break down those nutrients. That's going to take a really long time. So what we want to do is go ahead and feed the cells directly. And so it all comes down to the molecular structure. You have to have a structure that's small enough to penetrate the surface of the leaf. And that is our product Sold. Its molecular structure also carries a lot of trace minerals, and we mean in the ionic form. And ionic form means available. So organic is not available. It's made available through the mineralization of bacteria, and inorganic is available. And so when we apply organic products or foliar feed with organic products, again, we're relying on the bacteria to make those available. And so our special product Soul It's not only a great product to foliar feed by itself, but if you want to add your own little concoction of nutrients or micronutrients, you always want to add so it can bind to those nutrients and deliver them into the cell.
I do have a question. It says it
Yes.
contains over 60 trace minerals. How does that all come to be?
Well, because so is an actual derivative of humic acid. And so humic acid is a much larger molecule and it contains a lot more carbon. And so that carbon in nature is really designed to feed the microbes. And this process actually takes place in the soil. It's a very long process. You apply humic acid, the bacteria starts to feed on it, and the byproduct of that humic acid is a fulvic acid, which is our product so. And once that so has been broken down from that humic acid molecule, it's in its inorganic state, which means that it has a higher CEC. It's going to hold and exchange a lot more trace minerals. So basically, it all comes down to the bacteria.
Mhm. Don't you just love chemistry?
Yes.
Me too. All right. So now let's talk about essence. And we said earlier, essence is the ultimate hormone balance because it's going to contain naturally occurring plant hormones. And those plant hormones, when you use them at the right time, it's going to tell your roots to grow. You tell your tree to grow taller, to branch out, to bush out, to tell those flowers it's time to bloom, to hold those flowers on for longer. And it's also going to increase your bricks. It's going to increase your shelf life. And I felt we've done a lot of research. We've just done a lot of research trials with this, and the results they're really insane. Sometimes I feel we have too much flowers. Don't you? Do you ever feel like that?
Yeah, that it makes me a little nervous because we know that they're going to all hang on to the tree.
Yes, definitely. You definitely have to do some thinning when using this product, but it's great. The fruit that comes out tastes delicious, and we've had a lot of success. Derek's has talked about people not being able to get their trees to fruit. I do remember one of my buddies, he had a mulberry tree for 3 years, and you know what? It still looked very much like it did when it went into the ground, and we were just wondering why. He never got fruit. And given the amount of time it had been in the ground, it should have been producing. So what we did is we used essence and soul. And it was actually the two greatest things I noticed about that tree was actually the diameter of the trunk really put on size over that 1 year we used it. And he finally got fruit, which was so amazing. There's nothing better than to grow your own trees and to have your own fruit in your backyard.
Yes.
But it was the power of essence. I know it was definitely those hormones that help stimulate the tree to grow. And when used correctly, it's probably one of our most powerful products that will give you the best results you've ever had. Switching to noble gills, once again, it's a digestible form of nitrogen, meaning it's not going to burn your plants. It's safe to spray, trees, fruits, vegetables, everything. Also, once again, calcium and magnesium. You don't know how important this is, but we do. Calcium is going to help build the plant cells, which gives it its structure, the rigidity, making it solid, helping the fruit form. Magnesium starts the process of photosynthesis. We talked a little bit earlier about the metals and the cofactors, the metal cofactors that are needed to start this process. That is what is needed. Magnesium is needed to start photosynthesis.
And here's another little secret that we learned about noble gills. Most people like to show off their plants and they like to show, oh, look, I have beautiful dark green leaves. And we shake our heads and we say, that's not a good idea to have those dark green leaves. Well, to the inexperienced person, that's excellent. The plant is taking up the nutrients, it's growing. But what's also happening is that the plant is under a lot of stress. So dark green leaves does not equal a healthy plant. And so that's why we love to introduce a digestible form of nitrogen. And so we get the call, say, hey, my tree is looking a little light green. What's going on? I said, it's loving life.
Yeah,
It's loving life.
that means it's perfect. We know that
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's actually stress. When you see the dark, really, really dark green leaves, that's stressing out the plant. And when you have too much nitrogen in there, it's going to actually block out other forms of minerals that will be needed to absorb. So they can have antagonistic properties when you overload with one nutrient versus the other. Wrapping it up, both fertigation and foliar feeding are needed. We don't like to say that one's better, that one's better or the other, because they're not the same. You need them both to really, really work well. Our goal is to not to have any nutritional deficiencies. Feeding the roots is just as important as feeding the leaves and branches. So the roots is, like we said, it's that everyday approach. It's the really slow, constantly feeding with the fertigation, because that's where you're going to get a lot of your NPKs from. Foliar feeding, it's more precise. The leaves on a tree can actually absorb nutrients 8 times better than the roots, but only at 1/10 the volume. So that's perfect, meaning it's perfect for feeding those micronutrients. That's where you're going to be able to change the influence of the plant. You'll be able to make sweeter fruit, longer lasting blooms, longer lasting crops. In conclusion, both foliar feeding and fertigation are excellent methods to deliver the products. When used together, they can ensure the success of your crops by providing a complete range of nutrients. Feeding from the roots is just as important as feeding the leaves and branches, but no one technique is greater than the other. Fertigation is the everyday approach. It wins the day through consistency and can have everlasting effects on the soil. And foliar feeding is the precision move. It's very targeted, time sensitive, and has the ability to completely influence your plants from start to finish.
Awesome. Thank you, Derek and Anthony. This has been amazing. And, I've been telling people recently that our plants need to be fed every day. And that's what fertigation is doing. It's making food available for our plants every day. Just like we need to eat every day, so do our plants. And if we're only feeding them once or twice or 3 times a year, it's not enough, right?
Right.
Absolutely.
And it's spoon feeding. It's very, very small amounts versus a large amount of fertilizer at one point that may burn and cause negative effects. We're just giving, just little bits every day. Little bits every day, and that's really one of the best ways to use the wisdom line.
Nice. And there's fertigation machines that we can get a hold of, right?
Absolutely. They come in a various amounts of sizes. So you're going to have a reservoir. That reservoir may be 2 gallons, 3 gallons, or 5 gallons. And all you would have to do is make a solution, top off your reservoir, and turn it on.
Nice. Gotta
Just
love
that
it.
simple.